In ancient times, legends spoke of a rare gift, individuals whose music was so powerful it could pierce the veil between the living and the dead. They were called Fili on a forgotten island, firekeepers among the Choctaw, and griots in West Africa. Their melodies healed, uplifted communities, and connected worlds. But such a gift also attracted darkness. The story opens with a bloodied young boy named Sammy, clutching a broken guitar as he arrives at his father's church in a battered truck. His face bears open wounds. His father, Pastor Jed, embraces him warmly, proclaiming that the Lord has delivered Sammy from sin. He asks Sammy to stand before the altar and renounce his past life. Flashback: Clarksdale, Mississippi, October 16, 1932. Sammy is seen harvesting cotton in the fields. Later, he returns home and checks on his sleeping siblings. Meanwhile, two identical twins and World War I veterans, Smoke and Stack, have returned to the Mississippi Delta after years in Chicago running with gangsters. They await a meeting with Hogwood, a racist landowner, to purchase a sawmill and open a juke joint for the local black community. They use stolen mob money to close the deal and make it clear that no Klan members are to set foot on their property again. The next day, Sammy, an aspiring blues guitarist, tells his father he's finished his work at the quota. Pastor Jed pressures him to help deliver a sermon at the church on Sunday, but Sammy yearns for freedom and for music. His father warns him that blues music is touched by the supernatural, and that one day, the devil himself may follow the sound home. Ignoring the warning, Sammy leaves with Stack and Smoke, who happens to be his cousins. On the drive, Smoke checks in on Sammy's relationship with his father, making sure everything is okay between them. They arrive at a rural spot where they've stashed supplies for the juke joint's grand opening. Sammy discovers a rattlesnake in the truck, which Smoke quickly kills. As dusk falls, Smoke suggests rescheduling the party, but Stack insists it must happen tonight. They split up to gather the people they need. Stack drives Sammy, while Smoke takes the supply truck. Smoke stops at a local store, leaving a little girl to watch his truck for 20 cents a minute, instructing her to honk twice if anyone comes near. Inside, Smoke reunites with Bo Chow, a Chinese store owner, and asks him to supply the juke joint. When the girl sounds the horn, Smoke rushes out to find two men stealing from his truck. He shoots one in the leg, only to realize the other is Terry, an old acquaintance. Smoke grudgingly helps both men, then pays Bo to patch them up. Back inside, Bo's wife Grace arrives. Smoke hires her to make a sign for the club, and they settle on a deal. Meanwhile, Stack and Sammy are on the road. Sammy asks about his father's death, something Stack had promised to explain to him when he gets older. Stack reveals a brutal truth. Smoke killed their father after he nearly beating Stack to death. Sammy, stunned, although Stack brushes it off as Sammy begins playing his guitar, his voice hauntingly beautiful and raw, catching Stack off guard. Then, they make a stop at the train station, where they encounter a pianist named Delta Slim. Slim chats with Stack as if they're old friends. Stack introduces Sammy to Slim and mentions that Sammy plays blues music, though Slim is skeptical. Stack then offers Slim a job as the pianist for the juke joint that night, offering him $20. Initially, Slim declines, saying he has other plans. But when Stack tempts him with a bottle of Irish beer from Chicago, Slim starts to reconsider. Stack sweetens the deal to $40 a night plus unlimited beer, which finally convinces Slim. Slim and Sammy begin playing music on the street, drawing a crowd. Stack also recruits a singer named Pearline, who quickly captures Sammy's attention. As Pearline and Sammy introduce themselves, a woman named Mary suddenly appears, recognizing Stack's voice. Before Sammy can warn him, Mary approaches. It's revealed she's Stack's ex-girlfriend, bitter over the way he left her behind when he moved to Chicago after what she believed was something special between them. Mary also informs Stack that her mother, who raised both Stack and Smoke, has died, and expresses her anger that neither of them showed up for the funeral. Stack brushes off her emotions, prompting Mary to storm off. Later, Stack, Slim, and Sammy visit a cotton farm, where Stack pays a field worker named Cornbread to join them as the juke joint's bouncer. Meanwhile, Smoke arrives at a secluded cabin deep in the woods. He places flowers on a grave, revealed to be that of his deceased son. There, he reunites with his estranged wife, Annie, who demands to know why he's come. Smoke tells her about the sawmill he recently bought and the juke joint opening that night. He asks her to join as the cook. Annie remains distant and confronts Smoke about the time he and Stack robbed a group of gangsters. Inside, Smoke offers her money to convince her, but she resists. They argue over Annie's belief in the occult, with her claiming her practices protected their twins. Smoke bitterly counters that their infant daughter still died. Despite the tension, Annie eventually agrees to join, embracing Smoke warmly. Passion reignites between them as they share an intimate moment. With the group now formed, They all prepare to head to the Juke joint. Stack with his recruits, Smoke and Annie, and Bo and Grace, who bid farewell to their daughter Lisa. Elsewhere, a badly injured Irish immigrant vampire named Remik stumbles upon a rural cabin belonging to Klansman Bert and his wife. Remik pleads for help, claiming he's being pursued by Choctaw vampire hunters. Unaware of his true nature, Bert and his wife agree to shelter him. Soon after, the Choctaw hunters arrive, warning the couple of how dangerous Remik truly is. Bert's wife lies, saying they haven't seen anyone. Once the hunters leave, she returns inside only to find that Remik has turned Bert into a vampire. Bert, now transformed, bites and turns his wife as well. Opening night at the Juke joint arrives, and the place begins to fill with guests, including Perline. Inside, Smoke discusses with Stack and Annie that everything should be paid in cash, but Stack and Annie insist that people should be allowed to enjoy themselves freely. Mary shows up soon after. Cornbread initially doesn't recognize her, but welcomes her in after realizing who she is. Sammy brings Perline inside, showing her around and telling her about himself, revealing that Stack and Smoke are his cousins. Suddenly, Sammy spots Mary and demands that she leave. As he tries to explain who he is, Mary recognizes him and offers to buy him a drink. They chat, and Mary asks whether Sammy is earning money from his music. He admits he isn't, yet. Later, Stack approaches Mary with money, trying to get her to leave. She refuses, saying she came for the music. They argue about their past, with Stack declaring that he would kill for her, but struggles to express how much he truly loves her. Meanwhile, Slim begins to play upbeat piano tunes, hyping up the crowd. He invites Sammy on stage to perform his best blues piece. Sammy introduces himself and performs a powerful song that captivates the crowd. His music is so emotionally charged that it inadvertently summons spirits from both the past and future to join the celebration. The haunting melody draws Remik's attention. He arrives at the Juke joint with his newly turned minions, Bert and his wife Joan. Inside, Sammy and Perline become intimate, passionately making out. As Sammy kisses her, she melts into the moment. At the entrance, Cornbread spots Remik and his entourage approaching. Inside, Smoke and Stack are discussing their financial struggles and the need to raise more money. At the door, Remik tells Cornbread he heard about the event and wants to join in. Just as tensions rise, Smoke, Stack, Annie, and Mary arrive. Remik introduces himself and his group, then notices Sammy and realizes he must be the musician whose performance pulled him there. He claims they're musicians too and offers to play, even presenting cash for entry. Still, Stack and Smoke hesitate and ask them to leave. Reluctantly, Remik turns to go. Meanwhile, Sammy tells Smoke that he's considering leaving the family to move to Chicago. Upstairs, Stack has a private conversation with Mary, revealing the bar's financial issues. He suggests she approach Remik to try getting some money from him. Though hesitant, he ultimately allows it, and hands her a gun for protection. Outside the Juke joint, Mary approaches Remik and his eerie minions, who are singing haunting melodies under the moonlight. She stands, captivated, before sitting with them and demanding proof of the money they claim to have. Remik presents her with gold, assuring her she can keep it. However, he also remarks that she's carrying deep pain. Mary opens up about her mother's recent death. As their conversation deepens, Mary senses something is off, especially when she notices the unnatural gleam in Remik's eyes and saliva slowly dripping from his mouth. Alarmed, she tries to leave, but before she can escape, Remik levitates and violently transforms her into a vampire. Inside, Perline begins singing, her soulful voice igniting a frenzy of dancing and cheering from the crowd. Soon after, Mary returns, now fully turned, but no one suspects a thing. At the entrance, she convinces Cornbread to let her back in, unaware of her transformation. As Cornbread steps away to relieve himself, he asks Slim to watch the door. Mary finds Stack and hands him the gold she received, then seductively kisses him. Meanwhile, out in the woods, Cornbread hears strange, unsettling noises while taking a piss. Inside, Smoke breaks up a brutal fight between two locals wielding blades. Meanwhile, Mary leads Stack into a private room where they begin to hook up. Stack notices drool trickling from her mouth, but, in his passion, ignores it. Unaware of the bite marks hidden on her shoulder, Smoke sends Sammy to find Stack. When Sammy stumbles upon the intimate scene, he retreats in disgust and reports back. Smoke then checks himself, only to find Mary feasting on Stack's neck as blood spills from his wounds. Horrified, Smoke shoots her repeatedly. She appears to die, but moments later, she reanimates and flees into the night. Annie rushes in to find Smoke cradling Stack, but it's too late. Stack is dead. Panic spreads throughout the joint as the patrons demand answers. Slim tries to calm the crowd, but fear overwhelms them, and they begin to leave. Annie, growing suspicious, insists they take Stack's body outside, fearing he may rise again as a haint after witnessing Mary survive gunfire. Smoke refuses, asking if Annie could bring Stack back. She solemnly admits she cannot. Outside, Grace and Bo debate returning home to protect their daughter, Lisa. Bo volunteers to get the car. Suddenly, Cornbread reappears. Slim questions his whereabouts, especially after noticing Smoke's blood-covered clothes. Cornbread dodges the questions, asking to be let back in to help. Annie grows wary, finding it odd that Cornbread now needs to be invited in, despite having been inside earlier. When she challenges him to walk in uninvited, he hesitates, confirming her suspicion that he's been turned. As the tension rises, Cornbread demands money to leave. When Smoke offers it, Cornbread lunges to bite him. Smoke shoots him, confirming Cornbread has been turned into a vampire by Remik. Cornbread charges again, and Smoke narrowly escapes. Then, a loud knock echoes from the room where Stack's body was kept. He has turned, now a vampire, and demands to be let out. When Sammy approaches, Stack slams the door open, knocking him to the ground. Annie quickly repels Stack with pickled garlic juice, forcing him to flee. Annie realizes the vampires are multiplying. Grace grows anxious over Bo's whereabouts, but the survivors convince her to stay safe and wait until sunrise. Annie instructs the group to prepare for a fight using holy water, silver, wooden stakes, and garlic. She explains that vampires can't enter unless invited, are vulnerable to sunlight, and can be killed with silver or wooden stakes. Annie makes Smoke promise to kill her if she's ever bitten, to prevent her from turning. He solemnly agrees. Later, the group finds what appears to be a dead local and drags the body outside. Nearby, Smoke and Sammy hear eerie singing and laughter from the woods. Remik and the now-turned townsfolk are celebrating, having created an undead choir of infected victims. The two retreat back to the safety of the sawmill. Inside, suspicion grows among the survivors about who might be infected. Annie proposes a garlic test. Everyone must eat a clove. Pearline hesitates, claiming she hates the taste, but Smoke threatens her until she complies. She passes the test. Slim panics after taking his, claiming the garlic reacts badly with the beer he drank, but he turns out to be human. Eventually, they discover the dead local was just drunk. When he wakes and begs to be let back in, Cornbread ambushes and bites him. Suddenly, Bo casually shows up to take Grace with him, but something is off. He demands to be let in, revealing he's been turned into a vampire. Then, Remik arrives at the Juke joint, leading a horde of undead. Still unable to enter without an invitation, Remik begins negotiating. He threatens to go after Lisa at the grocery store if they don't let him in, enraging Grace. Remik praises Sammy's supernatural musical talent and offers him immortality, freedom, and escape from systemic racism, claiming his abilities can summon the spirits of his lost community. But the group refuses to hand Sammy over. Remik warns them that Hogwood, leader of the local clan and secretly aligned with Brett and Joan, is planning a dawn raid on the bar. Even Stack, now turned, tries to convince Smoke to join the vampires and gain eternal life. When Annie tells them to leave, Mary replies coldly, "We can't go without you." Suddenly, Stack continues trying to sway Smoke, insisting they could all be together forever. But the survivors, knowing what's at stake, rush back inside and lock the doors, bracing for the fight of their lives. Inside the sawmill, tension erupts as Grace furiously confronts Smoke. Remik has just threatened her daughter's life. Desperate and enraged, she insists they must act before the vampires turn the entire town. Smoke hesitates, uncertain of what to do, but Grace's urgency boils over. Suddenly, the haunting sound of vampires singing echoes from outside as they gather around the sawmill. Peering out, Grace spots her husband among them. Unable to bear it any longer, she grabs a wooden stake and heads toward the door. Smoke and Annie try to stop her, but Grace steps out and boldly invites the horde in, an invitation Remik doesn't miss. Chaos erupts inside as the survivors scramble to arm themselves. The vampires storm in through the doors. Grace immediately hurls a Molotov cocktail at Remik, but he knocks it aside. The room explodes into violence. Grace and her husband clash, both consumed by flames during their fight. Meanwhile, Pearline and Sammy hold off the creatures using silver bullets. As Remik continues turning survivors, Stack attacks Annie, biting her. Smoke rushes to her side, and Annie pleads for him to keep his promise. Tearfully, Smoke drives a stake through her heart, killing her. Mary watches in horror before Stack pulls her away. Realizing they're overwhelmed, Smoke, Pearline, Sammy, and Slim attempt to retreat. Slim, however, sacrifices himself to hold off the advancing horde, buying time for the others to escape. The vampires swarm over him. Smoke, Sammy, and Pearline flee, but are ambushed by Remik and Stack. A vicious fight ensues. Smoke and Stack engage in brutal hand-to-hand combat, while Sammy and Perline face off against Remik. Perline is bitten, and Smoke shoots Remik away from her. Perline begs Sammy to leave her behind as she succumbs to the infection. Smoke urges him to run. Sammy grabs his guitar and escapes, only to be confronted by Remik. The vampire slashes his face and tosses him into the nearby water. As Stack continues his assault outside, Remik tells Sammy that all he wants is his music and his story. Holding him underwater, Remik begins praying along with Sammy, blending worship with menace. The entire vampire horde gathers around. Back inside, Stack tries to bite Smoke, but the protective mojo bag Annie gave him fends Stack off, allowing Smoke to stake him through the heart. Outside, Sammy smashes his guitar over Remik's head. Remik lunges at him, but Smoke arrives just in time to plunge a stake into the vampire's chest. As Remik dies, the entire horde wails in agony, bursting into flames with the rising sun. Remik's body boils in the water, burning to ash as Smoke and Sammy watch in grim awe. Afterward, Smoke hands Sammy the car keys and urges him to go home and stay strong. Shaken and grief-stricken, Sammy returns to his father's church. Back at the sawmill, Smoke reflects on the memories of the Juke joint and those he's lost. He clutches the mojo amulet from Annie and prepares for one final battle. Hogwood and his clan militia arrive armed and ready, but Smoke, hiding in the woods, ambushes them. One by one, he takes them down in a blaze of vengeance. When one tries to flee, Smoke detonates a bomb, wiping him out. Though he is shot and mortally wounded, he finishes the job. He confronts Hogwood on the ground and, with quiet fury, lights a cigarette and unloads his weapon into him. As Smoke collapses, bleeding out, he sees a vision of Annie and their son. He smiles peacefully as he drifts into death. 60 years later, in modern-day Chicago, an elderly Sammy is now a legendary blues musician. One evening, he is visited by Stack and Mary. Stack reveals that Smoke spared him the night of the battle, under the condition that Sammy live a peaceful life. They offer him the chance to become immortal. Sammy declines. Stack asks him to play a song, and Sammy obliges. After the performance, Sammy reflects on that long-ago night, how it still haunts him. Yet, despite the horror, he admits that until the sun went down, it was the greatest day of his life. Stack agrees. It was the last time he saw Smoke, the last time he saw the sun, and the only time he ever truly felt free. The movie ends. Make sure to like and subscribe.